From the Mumbai studios of Republic TV, it's time for The Debate.
The last 1 month has been very difficult for every citizen of India. It's not a time to be complacent, but things are looking better. It's time to acknowledge that. It's time to understand we have to move forward in our battle with COVID, but this time we do it with more surety, with more sureness, and united like forever. I'm Ridhumanan Bhardwaj. Let's first take a look at what we are debating today as India fights the COVID fight together. That's debate number 1 that we are going to come to you with today. And here are the headlines this Tuesday evening.
केरला, राजस्थान, यूपी, गुजरात और छत्तीसगढ़ में एक कंटिन्यूड ट्रेंड टुवर्ड्स डिक्रीज इन एक्टिव केसेस भी नोट किया जा रहा है।
Daily cases lower, positivity rate drops, but the government says we will not lower the guard just yet.
जब आपका जिला कोरोना को हराता है तो देश कोरोना को हराता है। मेरे गांव में मैं कोरोना को प्रवेश नहीं करने दूंगा। ये गांव के लोग संकल्प लें।
Prime Minister emphasizes on local containment zones as cases rise in rural areas. Major milestone in COVID battle, co-vaccine trials for kids to start in 10 days. Alarm over rising cases in Karnataka. State records over 58,000 cases in a day. BJP claims Congress toolkit to target Prime Minister. Congress rebuts by calling it fake. Navy Coast Guard battle inclement weather to rescue 317 people from 2 barges off the West Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, the last 1 month has been extremely difficult for India. It's a month in which all of us have been united in trying to fight the COVID battle. It's a month in which every citizen has come ahead to fight this fight. But today, things are looking better. We acknowledge that. Today, the positivity rate has come down. There are fewer cases that are reported. There are things that are looking better. But it is not time to be complacent, as the government has said. It is, however, time to move forward with reassuredness. Take a look at this report.
In the early days of April, there was helplessness outside hospitals and despair on the streets as India was hit by the lethal second wave. A month later, the country seems to have gotten a grip over the situation. The nation has augmented the supply of critical medical essentials, and India has managed to bring down the COVID curve. The next challenge is to maintain the steady progress.
एक स्थाई पर जो एक्टिव केसेस ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही थी या जो स्टेट जिनसे एक्टिव केसेस या नए केसेस ज़्यादा आ रहे थे, उनमें हमने ओवरऑल डिक्रीजिंग ट्रेंड भी नोट किया है, जिसमें मुख्यतः अगर हम देखें तो पिछले एक हफ्ते में महाराष्ट्र, केरला, राजस्थान, यूपी, गुजरात और छत्तीसगढ़ में एक कंटिन्यूड ट्रेंड टुवर्ड्स डिक्रीज इन एक्टिव केसेस भी नोट किया जा रहा है।
But what is also important is that India does not lower its guard. The Prime Minister has flagged off concern of COVID spread in rural areas.
जब आपका जिला कोरोना को हराता है तो देश कोरोना को हराता है। और इसलिए जिले का मिजाज, गांव-गांव में एक मैसेज कि मेरा गांव मैं कोरोना मुक्त रखूंगा, मेरे गांव में मैं कोरोना को प्रवेश नहीं करने दूंगा, ये गांव के लोग संकल्प लें।
But India will turn the tide. In less than 12 days, Covaxin trials for children will begin.
जो कोवैक्सीन है हमारा वैक्सीन, उसको परमिशन दी गई है कि वो बच्चों में अब ट्रायल आगे लेके जाएं। काम मुझे बताया गया है कि अगले 10-12 दिन में ये काम भी शुरू हो रहा है।
And with the vaccine process getting streamlined by August, India will inch closer to the goal of successfully beating the pandemic. Let's debate.
Viewers from all states of the country, we're joined by doctors who are going to tell us the situation and make us understand what the way ahead for our children and for us will be in the second wave, and possibility of what we all don't want to know, but we should be cautiously knowing about the third wave. I want to welcome on our show our esteemed panelists who are joining us today, and a very warm and a very good evening to Padam Shri Dr. Alvinder Singh Soin, who is joining us, Chairman of the Institute of Liver Transplantation and Regenerative Medicine from Medanta, live from Delhi. We have also with us Dr. V. Raman Kutty, Research Director, Amla Cancer Research Centre, Trivandrum, live, joining us from Trivandrum. Dr. Kutty is known as someone who's also worked for public health. He's pioneering in public health in the state of Kerala. I welcome also him on the show. We're also joined by Dr. Jalil D. Parker, pulmonologist, live from Mumbai. Dr. Surbhi Madan, CIMS Ahmedabad, and infectious diseases consultant, live from Ahmedabad. Dr. Raju Vyas, Director, Fortis Hospital, live from Delhi. Dr. Vishal Rao, Dean, Centre for Academic Research, HCG Cancer Centre, and member of Expert Committee, COVID Task Force in the Government of Karnataka, also joining us live. Doctor, all across India who are joining us to give us a sense of what's happening in India. My first question is going to be to Dr. Soin, who's with us, Dr. Parker, who's with us, and Dr. Kutty, to get a sense of not only what's happening in the capital, what's happening in Mumbai and Trivandrum, but also to get a larger picture of what needs to be done ahead. So I begin with you, Dr. Kutty. You have pioneered when it comes to research in public health in the state of Kerala. Today, when we are seeing a national crisis that has taken over our lives, today when we are trying to come forward and find solutions, what do you think is the one thing that has to prominently be looked at today when the cases are coming down, there are positivity rates that is today declining?
Yes, we can be cautiously optimistic because number of cases seem to have stabilized and perhaps are coming down, especially in the state of Kerala. Over the last few days, they have been not so high as it was before. So probably we can say that the trend is going down. But that doesn't mean that we are over the risks or the danger zone yet. Because so many people are not vaccinated, the large majority are not vaccinated. We don't have enough information on the seropositivity, the antibody levels in the population. There have not been enough studies on that, so we can have to assume that most of the people are still at risk. So in this situation, I think the basic fundamental preventive measures like distancing and masks and avoiding of crowds has to go on, and we have to definitely think of strategies how to get the vaccination levels up. I think these are the priorities for now.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Soin, I also want to ask you, as these are priorities, India also records the highest recoveries. Isn't India doing better when today India has recorded the highest number of daily recoveries at 4,22,436 cases? I also want to ask you about something you had written about when it came to tocilizumab, that has shown to have reduced deaths in severe COVID cases without other infections. What is the way ahead that India should be able to procure this?
Can you repeat that? I did not, it was not very clear to me, the question.
Yeah, so I'll take that.
Yes, I was, Dr. Kutia, I was asking the question to Dr. Soin. Yes, Dr. Soin.
So these are two separate issues. So as far as the numbers are concerned, we're all very happy that the curve seems to be going down. The only caveat here is I hope it's not an illusion. I hope it's not just the curve of urban India, because we all know that there are rural dwellings where the numbers are going up. There are many villages across UP, Bihar, South India, Northeast, where the numbers are going up. So I hope it's not just because they don't have testing facilities, and we're not counting their numbers because they can't have access to testing or, for that matter, treatment. So with that caveat, if the numbers are actually true, then it's a very encouraging trend. While there is hope and optimism, I don't think there is any chance to or any time to let our guard down at this time. We have a path totally carved out in front of us. We have a huge job to do, all of us together, in the next 4 or 6 months that it might take for the third wave to come, and I believe it may come. So we have a work set out for us. We have to vaccinate rapidly. Having said that, I think that we also need to get a handle from the districts. We need to get a handle on the rural numbers. So that is something that needs to be done. So just to make sure that there are no pockets of infection in the villages without us realizing that. That's one. As far as the treatment is concerned, you know that the treatment has been evolving ever since the pandemic came in. So, as you know, the Indian government, ICMR, have dropped plasma therapy as recommended as a part of the treatment. The rest of the treatment protocol remains pretty much the same. Tocilizumab has a role among severe patients, patients with severe COVID, ideally before they get ventilated, and especially if they do not have any other superadded infection. Once they have a superadded infection, then they should not be given tocilizumab. And if given to the right patients, two things will happen. It will save lives, and also there will be no shortage. But if it is given indiscriminately, there will be an artificial shortage, and it won't have the desired effect where it should.
Yes, that's crucial, and we're going to look at how we're able to get that, because that's only going to help our fight even more. Dr. Jalil D. Parker, Dr. Soin has said that the third wave could most likely be there. I want to ask you about this because several people say it's going to be affecting our children, sir. How do we prevent our children from getting affected in the third wave? What is the precaution the children need to take, and why? And how do we ensure that there is a vaccine that will be able to help our 2 to 12-year-olds also?
Well, I think so this question needs to be addressed to a pediatrician. However, we need to have a vaccine for the children, which I think will come in due course of time. As regards to the third wave, which we are expecting, let us first cross the second wave, which we are, I think, slowly inching towards. So we have to see to it that we are able to cross the second wave and we are alive. Only then we can think of the third wave, which I don't know when it will come, but that is expected. The second wave was also expected, but we were a little complacent after the first wave. I think that caught us off guard because of the humongous tsunami that occurred after the first wave in the second wave. As regards to medications that are there, when we are talking about the third wave, whether we are talking about the mutation, whether we are talking about the young generation getting affected or the children also getting affected, I would like to address a couple of things over here. And that is that, we are flip-flopping. It's not a blame game to us medicos, the medical fraternity, but it is also, especially from India, but it is everywhere around the globe. Now, today, I think is the latest one by the WHO that they are getting remdesivir off the list. Now, what are we left with? For example, in India, we are not getting tocilizumab, we are getting remdesivir. Now, when we address the issue by giving a lot of steroids, now we are facing the effects of steroids. There is something called as black fungus or mucormycosis, which is now grievously affecting the patients to such an extent that every reputed institution, at least in Mumbai, and I'm sure it is in the other cities too, there are at least 3 or 4 patients who come walking into the outpatients and they are mucormycosis positive. So what are we left with? And it is because of this flip-flop that we are not able to address the issue. We are not able to address what is the finality of the treatment that we are going to give for COVID patients, and how are we going to convince not only the patients but also the relatives. What is happening now is whenever we give a recommendation, like one of the doctors, he just said a few minutes ago that tocilizumab, if it is used in the nick of time, it has its advantages. Yes, of course. But the population at large thinks that it is because of tocilizumab that you're going to die. Now they will say that it is because of remdesivir that people are going to die. So I think we all have to understand that we have to leave it to a clinician who is seeing the patient day in and day out to decide what is the best modality of treatment for that particular patient. It need not be that it is across the board for all the patients. No, I'm sorry. Along with that, there will be the lab investigations, the CT scans, etc., which will assist us in coming to a final modality of treatment. What is happening now is that the general practitioners from all over, including in the city of Mumbai, they are prescribing steroids left, right, and center. Now, is that the correct option? So, a couple of days back, somebody said that usage of abuse of oxygen. Now, who is that doctor or that nurse who abuses the usage of oxygen? Please tell me. On one hand, we have to see to it that the patient does not go on the ventilator. If he goes on the ventilator, the chances of his recovery are bare minimum. So what do? You have your nasal prongs, you have oxygen which is given maybe at 2 liters or 4 liters, then you have the high flow reservoir mask, you have the high flow nasal mask that is there. You are going to make that attempt, even though the oxygen consumption might be a little more. That is not the reason for shortage of oxygen. I'm sorry to say this. Then you have the non-invasive ventilator, and then eventually you have the ventilator, invasive ventilator. So one has to judiciously use it diligently at an appropriate time. You cannot wait for a patient to worsen that he goes on the ventilator and then you want to make an attempt to do everything. Plasma is out. Now if you tell me that tocilizumab is out, you want to say remdesivir is of no use, what are you left with? Are you going to give only blood thinners and steroids? I'm sorry. None of us actually, till today, including myself, know exactly what COVID is doing to the human body. Please understand, it has evolved over a period of time, over a year. The researchers are doing their research. But what about at this moment? As a physician, we are required only a couple of things, and that is we need the bed, we need the oxygen, we need remdesivir, we need tocilizumab, we need steroids, we need blood thinners. These are the only modality of treatment which we are juggling with. Now, out of that, if you remove 2 or 3, or there is, there is no oxygen supply, how is a physician going to treat? And my question is that please do not address these questions to us. We are the treating physicians. Please address these questions in the corridors of power. We are not interested to know where the oxygen is coming from, whether the army is going to get in the oxygen, whether the rail roadways is the mode to deliver the oxygen. We are not concerned with that. What we need is we want to see that the patient is safe and sound, and so that he goes home. hale and hearty. You can't see people
Dr.
dying
Parker,
and begging of
yes.
you.
Yes. And that's a very valid point. I also want to take it now across. From Karnataka, Dr. Vishal Rao, the Dean, Center for Academic Research, HCG Cancer Center, and member of the expert committee, the COVID task force that's been made by the government of Karnataka, who's joining us. Dr. Rao, cases in Karnataka are rising at an alarming rate. Today we heard the figure of 58,000 cases. What is the way ahead in the state? What is not only when it comes to oxygen, not only when it comes to trying to get the medicines like Dr. Parker was saying, but also how to tackle the second wave, and also how should we be prepared for a third wave? We all know mass vaccination on a war footing is the way ahead.
Good evening, Rhythm. The first thing that I would like to make a point is that in Karnataka today, the case numbers were at around 30,309. But what was concerning was that the positivity rate still seems to be at around 30%, and the fatality rate is at around 1.7%, with about 500 deaths recorded today. So while on one hand the numbers overall have decreased from where it started with about 50,000 per day at around the peak, to it has reduced now post the lockdown. But the biggest concern that is continuing to be, there is high positivity rate. So they did about 90,000 tests, for example, today, and of which 30,000 were positive. Now, considering and looking at these numbers, what's very, very important for us to know is that the next coming days, when we open the lockdown, we are expecting that this trend will continue, because this is classically a socio-economic virus. The more social, the more economic activity, the more this virus is going to explode. And lockdowns are a temporary measure to prepare. They are not a treatment for COVID. Lockdown is a temporary measure where you prepare for beds, for oxygen, for ventilators, for triaging, and for vaccination. But at this juncture, what we are concerned about is, if you open the lockdown, these numbers are going to jolt up. But if you continue the lockdown, even vaccination suffers. So it's a catch-22 situation at this current point in time. So we will need to devise formulas which has to be based on the geography, and decide how are we going to balance opening the economy versus balancing the prevention of explosion. And the first important point in this lies on the citizens, because I think this virus is being moved by us. We need to understand this, that this is the one virus where we are moving it. And at that juncture, we cannot be sitting and blaming everyone around us to say that the positivity rate is going up. So somewhere the onus lies on us. And the answer lies also on vaccination. And it's a tough days ahead, because, for example, in Karnataka today, we are only at 10% of the vaccination of the population, and 90% still lies open. So hopefully this 1 year is going to be a difficult task, where we'll have to balance lockdown and balance opening the economy in a very, very critical manner, so that we don't overburden the hospitals. So I have made one appeal here, and I want to repeat that every socio-economic zone, whether it's an apartment, a house, or whether it's a workplace, will need to be run like a hospital, like how all the doctors here are running their clinics. We will have to run our socio-economic zone, and that's the only way to kind of plateau this curve, and the responsibility lies on the citizens. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you that it is responsibility of the citizens. Dr. Raju Vyas, I also want to ask you, like Dr. Rao said, there is an important responsibility that citizens also have here, because we need mass vaccination, but we also need to open up the economy. How is it that India is now faring versus others also needs to be seen here, Dr. Vyas? When 1.8% of the total population of India has been affected, but the infection is to under 2% of the population, how is India the story of doom? If we actually consider and we actually mark out, India has administered 13.32 vaccines per 100 people, and countries like Australia have administered 12.14 vaccines per 100 people.
Yeah. So all of my friends, they have majority of the question has been answered by them. I would like to answer your question in this way. Like we have to, because I'm not an economist, I'm a doctor, or I'm a physician by profession, I'm a surgeon by profession. So it's very difficult for me to say that when to open the economy and what to close it down. But at the moment of time when India is facing through this second big wave, what we are supposed to do and what results we have seen is only because we have paused a button, and which is known as lockdown. And because of the lockdown, we are getting a good amount of results, and good results, especially in the urban area. That's what Dr. Soin also told. But what has happened is that majority of these districts, actually, if you see one by one, and if you see that the infectivity rate in majority of these districts are a little bit on a higher side. Still, somewhere it is 20%, somewhere it is 30%, and few of the districts it is still 40%. So as an clinician, what I feel is that till our infectivity rate doesn't come down in a single digit or maybe less than that, then till doesn't time we have to keep the lockdown in such a way that meanwhile we can keep on opening a little bit of our economy, thereby the people, poor people especially, who can earn their bread and butter, and simultaneously we can keep on checking the data actually. Simultaneously, we have to keep on doing vaccination amongst our young and old people. And, you know, as you have pointed out rightly, first, when you started your conversation, during that time, you raised a question about how we're going to fight the second or third wave. We are not worried about third wave as a whole, as in clinicians, because we are worried at this moment of time about the second wave, because it's a more virulent type of virus, as everybody knows. And, you know, it is affecting not only the adults, but it is also affecting the kids also in India. And even though my colleague from Mumbai, he will also agree upon that in even Mumbai also there were many patients, kids especially between 2 years and 17 years, they're getting affected by coronavirus. So we have to see in triple ways. You can say standard remains that infrastructure needs to be further strengthened, especially for pediatric age group. Simultaneously, we have to keep on doing vaccination. And we have to keep on lockdown also, because, you know, if we'll suddenly open it up, and what will happen is, again, the cases or percentile of infectivity rate will further go up. So we do not want that. And for that, these three measures should be enough, I probably feel. Continue the lockdown for some more time, keep on doing vaccination program, running vaccination program, and to protect our kids, the best better thing will be both the parents should get vaccinated. And I think probably 80 to 70%, 80 to 90% of our kids can get protected, because if both the parents takes a vaccination, then probably we can protect our kids also. And meanwhile, our Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is already allowed the Covaxin further to test it between 2 years and between 16 years. Results will finally come out in the month of November. During that time, I probably feel it will be a safe vaccine for even kids also. So these 3 or 4 months are very important for us, especially for protecting our society and continuing doing a good work, what we are doing right now. And one more aspect which is there, and majority of us we agree upon, we don't know about what is happening in villages, because, you know, not many testings are taking place in villages. So for that also, the government has to come out with some ideas, and we have to do a test even in villages, and vaccination program also needs to be started, because, you know, there's a divide for even amongst the vaccination program also. The urban area vaccination program is, or urban people are in urban areas, the vaccination has gone up to many times. But look at villages. Villages, we don't have any data, or very minuscule amount of people are getting vaccinated. So this divide should not happen. I probably feel both the areas to be simultaneously vaccinated. And we have to keep on testing even villagers also. And we have to keep on educating. I know majority of them are uneducated people, may not be knowing about the severity of this disease. But we have to protect our village people also, because as we know that 60% of our population lies in the villages. So that is a major chunk also. Apart from urban area, we have to protect our villagers also.
Yes, Dr. Vyas has very crucially spoken about, viewers, the villages and the rural vaccination that has to take place. Dr. Parkar has clearly said that it is the doctors who need to be in control when it comes to giving medicines, because they would know independently what's happening in each case. Dr. Kuti spoken about the larger need, about what as a society has to be done in such cases, because we have to move forward for economic growth. Dr. Rao has also very clearly said that in the next 1 year, we have to move forward. This has to be done by balancing the economy as well as the vaccination process. And Dr. Soin has spoken about the way ahead as well. Dr. Surbhi Madan, as I come to you, you've been leading when it comes to infectious diseases and the study in that. You're a research. You've also been in Ahmedabad as the infectious diseases consultant, one of the very few in the country in this regard. I wanted to ask you specifically, what have we to be worried about when the new COVID strain in Singapore, Dr. Madan, has started to be erupting? Of course, India has taken precautions. There are going to be no flights, etc. from Singapore. But what is this new COVID strain? How worried should we be for new mutants in the air? Because everybody is speaking about the new second variant that actually led to the second wave in India.
Hi, Rhythm. So, this is not only one mutant strain. Any virus, all the viruses are known to mutate with time. So COVID is no different. Coronavirus is no different. So we have a lot of mutant strains which we already know by now. And whenever mutation happens, the nature of the virus changes. And these microorganisms, they are known to, evolve with time, and they are known to evade the immune systems, and they are known to attack more fiercely whenever they mutate. So yes, we are worried about the mutants, but the good part of the story and the positive news is that whatever research is going on the vaccines, be it the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna or even our Covishield vaccine, the good part is that we have found that many of the mutant strains, which we know now that their virocity, that is, they are more virulence is more, these vaccines are covering many of these mutant strains. So the answer to all the questions and everything, ultimately, it just summarizes to vaccination, vaccination, and vaccination. That is the only thing which is, which we are hopeful on, and that is the only mode which can prevent us from getting, in the soup as we got in this second wave. So we know that COVID is not going to leave us. It is going to stay with us. There is going to be more and more mutant viruses. There are going to be new mutations which may be more virulent, which may affect us worse in the worst form. But yes, if we vaccinate most of our population on a war front, yes, we will definitely make a difference, including the children. As everyone is talking about the vaccination, we are really looking forward to vaccinate our children, because that is the population which will be left out and which we are really worried about. As we are already seeing, the epidemiology has changed. The first wave came, it took a toll on majority of our patients who worsened in the last wave were the elderly, whom we lost. But right now we have seen a lot of mortality happening amongst the young patients. And one of the reasons could be that we could not vaccinate our young population in time. So now we look forward to vaccinate the population as early as possible, and our children especially. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Madan, that is clearly the way forward that we have to move with. I also want to then get a sense of how we need to move forward this time with vaccination. But I'm also getting a lot of figures, and I want to go across here to Dr. Kuti, Dr. V. Raman Kuti, to ask him about this. Since, Dr. Kuti, you've spoken earlier about public health. How is India going to move forward in the vaccination process, keeping in mind, like earlier Dr. Vyas had spoken about the rural areas? How soon do you think we can actually get this done? We are being told, if we actually see the figures that we are getting about the vaccination that is taking place, we are being told that the coverage is increasing, where we've been told that there is a lot of new vaccines that are coming into the picture, whether it's the India recording more and more people, whether it's SII or whether it's Bharat Biotech that is saying that we are going to come out with new vaccines. Nasal vaccine is also underway. Bharat Biotech has said that we're going to have 7.8 crore monthly doses as well.
Yes, I think the consensus seems to be that the final solution may come from vaccination, but that leaves me a bit worried because there are two major issues here. One is the availability of vaccines and who is going to pay for them. Now the policies have been changing, little bit here and there each time. The government keeps shifting, and now it's not very clear whether the states are going to buy. I mean, there are many states who are making, like my state is making an independent bid for vaccines in the international arena or whatever. So other states are also doing that. So it seems to be that the states are on their own, which I am not very sure it's the right policy, but that I'm not going to discuss that. But the other more important and major issue as I find it is that for decades we have neglected the health system, especially in the rural areas in India, and I think we are partly paying a price for that. We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the people, we don't have the health workers to push this on a large scale. Even now, most of them who are in the field are tired, they are fatigued, and the huge task of vaccinating India's population is going to be a big challenge. So that is what is a very important challenge, because our infrastructure is weak. We don't have enough PHCs, we don't have enough people in the PHCs and peripheral units, especially in the rural areas. And to bring the people to the vaccination centers also, because many of the people may not be motivated. How do you induce such a population to accept vaccination? There may be resistance pockets. So all these are major issues. It's a big logistic and policy challenge that I see. And I think the politicians and the people who are taking this forward have to think very deeply about this, and with of course the help of the doctors and other experts who will be talking about the technical aspects. But the technical aspects may not be the challenge. Actually, the technical aspects, as you know, it is one disease where you have had several vaccines within a very short span of time. We haven't seen this in the history of epidemics before. Within 1 year we had at least 2 or 3 vaccines, and now there are more vaccines. So technical issues are not the problem, but the logistic challenge is a much bigger issue. That is what I feel. Thank you.
Absolutely. I also want to go across to Dr. Arvinder Singh Soin now. Dr. Soin, isn't it also a cause of concern when India is recording close to 1,200 cases of the black fungus disease across the country? States are making separate arrangements for treating the same. How should India protect itself from something that everyone is talking about, the black fungus disease? There are people who have steroids, there are people who have diabetes. What is the precautions they have to be taking?
Rhythm, we may not know enough about COVID, but we certainly know enough about the black fungus. Mucormycosis is a very well-known entity for probably 50 years now, and it has resurfaced because of 2 reasons in COVID. One is a lot of diabetics get COVID, and that actually gives rise to opportunistic infections with this fungus. And the other is the use of steroids, or might I say, overuse or abuse of steroids. So the way to get around it is to control diabetes well, to use steroids only when indicated for only as long as it is indicated. For example, in mild COVID, which is 85 to 90% cases, you don't need steroids. For moderate cases of COVID who are in the hospital, only 5 to 10 days of steroids are needed, and moderate doses. And only in very severe cases, which are only about 2 to 3%, you need high doses of steroids to continue for maybe 3-4 weeks. So if these guidelines are followed, I'm sure the use of steroids will come down. The sugars will be better controlled for diabetics and non-diabetics. And if you get control on blood sugars and the use of steroids, it will definitely bring down black fungus. There are other factors like poor orodental hygiene, poor hygiene with oxygen therapy, and so on, which are important also. But the main 2 factors that are causing it that need to be controlled are uncontrolled diabetes and overuse of steroids.
So that's very crucial. Less steroids and less when it comes to diabetes, one has to take more precaution. Dr. Soin, that is something very crucially that has to be done. Dr. Parker, I also want to ask you, there is a lot also being said, like you spoke earlier about a drug shortage. Isn't it also a cause of concern when hospital states like Karnataka and Gujarat have reported shortage of supply of the antifungal drugs? How is India to also look at this? Because there is a matter of concern in some ways when the fatality rate of 1.10% has recorded the highest daily COVID death cases recorded of 4,329 in the last 24 hours, which is the highest daily death toll.
See, the medical fraternity, whether it is the doctors and the nurses, we are always at the receiving end. People do not realize that we are risking our lives day in and day out since March 23rd or 24th of 2020 to date. Now, having said that, I do not understand as to what is a treating physician or who has a COVID patient with him, who walks into the hospital, is supposed to treat with. On one hand, you are saying that plasma is out. Okay, I can understand that. You are saying steroid has to be used very diligently and prudently. Yes, of course, because we have the implications which we are seeing now of abuse of steroids, like my other colleague just said. Now, if you don't have remdesivir, if you don't have tocilizumab, if you don't have antifungals, what are we supposed to do? If there's no oxygen, what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to tell the patient, no, this is not available, and we are handcuffed and we can't do anything? So I'm sorry. We are trained to save the life of a patient. So how the medications are supposed to be in good supply is not our concern. Our concern is that they should be present when we want it. Where is the default? Why is it that it is not procured in the period of time? Whether it is the distributors, whether it is the makers of the vaccine, whether it is import, that is not our concern. Yes. Our concern is that we should see to it that the medicine is given to us in time so that we can save the life of a patient. We don't have time to breathe. Please understand, a day in and day out, the nursing staff, the technicians, the nursing attendants, they are all wearing their PPE kits for nearly 8 to 10 hours every day without a sip of water, without tea, without coffee, without a sandwich too. They can't even go to pee. We as senior doctors, we can understand that we are there for 3 hours and then we can come out. So please see to it that these things are available, which they are usually not available. Whom are we supposed to blame? Are we supposed to keep on blaming people in the corridors of power? That's not our concern. Our concern is the patient comes, he has to get the treatment and he has to go back alive. We can't see him day in and day out begging of us that please save me, doctor, please save me, doctor. Don't let me go on the ventilator. So my concern is that, and I am with folded hands pleading with every one of you all, every citizen of India, every bureaucrat, every government, whether state or central, that we are really tired. We are exhausted. It is affecting us mentally. It's not only affecting the doctors, it is affecting the nursing staff. Every day you go to change into a PPE kit, the nursing staff will ask you, no sooner you go into the ICU or into the COVID ward, they will say, sir, when is this going to end? So please understand and please try to help us. It's all that we ask for. We are not asking for the moon. We are asking you to give us the medicines. We are asking you to give us the oxygen. We are asking you to create a bed for somebody who is going to die.
Yes, Dr. Parker. I completely and wholeheartedly, along with Republic TV, along with my team and along with India, empathize with the kind of work our doctors, our frontline warriors are doing. And this is not just lip service that Republic TV, our team, is giving. We have personally heard stories from several people, whether it's in Kerala, whether Karnataka, Delhi, Mumbai. People are coming forward and talking about the kind of God that they have seen when doctors have treated them, and that's why we salute them at Republic TV. And I completely understand it is time what the doctors are asking for has to be given. Dr. Vishal Rao, Dr. Parker said something which is going to be my next question to you then. When do you think the second wave is likely to end? Is there supposed or likely to be a third wave? And when do you think there can be a glimmer of hope that this is finally going to be behind us?
So Rhythm, I think to continue to the point that he alluded to, when we say second wave, first wave or the third wave, you see there is a distinction we are making, that there is a small area of plateau that happens between two of the peaks, and that we consider as though the virus has decided to take a rest and it is not going to multiply. Now that would be wrong. That plateau period is the period when it silently is growing within the community, when there is an actual community transmission. What is grossly a bigger concern that we should know is, currently as per the data, India has about 25,000 odd mutations, of which 8,500
and in the next coming months to years, we are going to see more and more of vaccine escape mutations that are going to come up. So in the current state, as we are looking at,
we see that moment the lockdown will be opened up, this number is again going to jump up, and this number will continue to go and rise until we get a certain critical amount of vaccination to achieve herd immunity. Now, this is going to be a daunting task, and that is why it's going to be very, very crucial for us to also use genome surveillance
and understand how are they going to be quickly mutating and keep a map, because the first vaccines that have been created with the plan of the first strains of the virus. So it's very, very crucial for us to rapidly enhance our vaccination programs. And there are 22 current vaccines globally available which have got approval, which have completed phase 3 trials. And many of them are coming under the SRA, the Stringent Regulatory Authority. So this is the time that we actually have to fast track our vaccination programs so that we are able to control this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, like you speaking, and I'm going to take it from there to also Dr. Rao to Dr. Vyas. Dr. Vyas, I'm going to take off from where Dr. Rao has just spoken of and ask you the question here. Sputnik V is to become part of the vaccination program. India is going to ramp up the production when India is going to accelerate by producing more than 250 crore vaccinations in the next 7 months to fully vaccinate the entire population. Do we then with a certainty say that in the next 6 to 8 months India can be fully vaccinated, keeping in mind the very crucial point you raised also about our rural population?
Yeah, it will be a very difficult task, as the majority of our friends are saying at the moment. The pace with which we are going in India, I feel it will take another maybe 30 to 40 months to vaccinate the 98 crore population of our country. Because, as my friend told us, that basically the major resistance will come, especially in the village. Village people will not going to accept the vaccination program as by heart, and it will be difficult in that area. Okay, urban area, majority of us, we know what is the significance and what is the importance of taking a vaccination. Now, majority of the people, as we are knowing, we are seeing every day that there are long queues around in the area where they are doing a vaccination or vaccination centers. So it's an encouraging sign on one way. But, as again point comes on the same way, like we have to procure this much amount of vaccination as early as possible. Thereby, at the year end, we should vaccinate our 98 crore of people in the country. That is a major challenge. I think probably there might be major hurdles. First, procurement will be a major problem. Then we are going to have resistance from our own people. And last but not the least, then another part will be how to vaccinate our kids also, because that is also an important aspect. And many of us, and we know that in between second and third wave, there might be a few people who will be left alone, and in that the category, the age group between 2 to 16 or 17 will be left alone, apart from people who are not getting vaccinated right now. They will be the factor on which new mutant virus can come and affect. So to prevent everybody, I probably feel the fast tracking of our vaccination program needs to be done, so by we can prevent or we can decline the second wave, as well as we can take care of our third wave, which is supposed to come any moment of time.
Okay, that's crucial. Then any moment of time, therefore we have to look at that. Dr. Surbhi Madan, I also want to ask you, there are infectious diseases that have to be seen. COVID itself is something that is spreading in all parts of society. What are the do's and don'ts that now have to be kept in mind? Everybody is taking COVID appropriate behavior. Most of the states are in lockdown. We are being told that there's a lockdown that's continuing to be extended, whether it's in Karnataka, whether it's in Delhi, whether it's in Maharashtra. But other than being inside, we're also now being told, and someone did speak about the WHO, that it's airborne. So what are the things that one needs to keep in mind to ensure full precautions are taken when it comes to safety?
So we all know that the most important steps to tackle is mask, social distancing and hand hygiene. Now, COVID being airborne, definitely there are reports, but most of the disease still spreads through the respiratory route, by which we mean that close proximity to the patient is most of the time responsible for the spread of the disease. Now, as my colleagues have mentioned, lockdown is a temporary measure, though all the states are in lockdown right now. But once the lockdown opens, definitely we are going to have again slow spreading of the disease. And then again, once it reaches a critical, a critical stage, and then that's how the peak again happens. So what we need to remember is that any vaccination, any natural immunity to the virus, till now we don't have strong data, how much time will it remain for, because we have already started seeing, we have already seen, reinfections in patients who have suffered from COVID. So we cannot be relaxed even if we have suffered from COVID or we are vaccinated. We cannot let our guards down. We still have to take full precautions, due precautions, that is mask, till we are not, we don't know when COVID will leave us. Any pandemic, when it starts, most of the times these are viral pandemics, it will take at least 2 to 3 years epidemiologically for any pandemic to come to a controllable situation. So till that time, there is no doubt that we cannot let our guards down, because we already know that the immunity is not very prolonged, whether it is after the natural infection or whether it is, we'll come to know how much time this vaccination leaves us immune for, and whether we will need the booster doses or not. Thank you.
Yes. All right, and my last question to Dr. Arvinder Singh Soin, and I want to just conclude this. We've heard very clear dicta, Dr. Soin, when it comes to vaccination. All of you and all the doctors are saying it has to be on a war footing. When it comes to rural population, they also have to be vaccinated. What is the blueprint for India to move ahead? Because we are clearly being told by all of you as our doctors, as our experts here, that the mass vaccination has to happen. We've also been told there's a policy by the government that's looking into it. There are also certain changes happening, whether it's plasma therapy being dropped now. What is a blueprint that as doctors you feel is a must to move ahead?
So the job is clearly
out. We were very irresponsible as a people, as a nation, between the first and the second waves. That must never happen. We must avoid all crowding and all congregations. So that is something we need to do. The second thing is that it's very encouraging that India will be producing about 17 crore vaccines per month from August onwards. But there is a hiatus between now and August. And these 3 months, we should try and procure as many vaccines from abroad. That means import them, whether it is Sputnik or J&J or even the mRNA vaccines, the Moderna and the Pfizer, we must try to procure them from elsewhere and vaccinate our people. The WHO has talked about the apartheid of vaccines in the world. Well, I kind of agree with that sentiment. It should not be that the rich have 6 doses per person and the poor nations have, 1 among 6 people. So that is the inequality that needs to be looked at. And that's the next 3 months, because after that, we probably will be self-sufficient. But it's the next 3 months that worries me.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. This is not something that should happen. Ladies and gentlemen, as I thank all our doctors for being here, I take off from where Dr. Parker said. Dr. Parker, we are in this fight together with our doctors, completely empathizing and saluting all of you for all the work you're doing. So thank you all with a full heart. We all say thank you to our doctors, because you continue striding on no matter what and helping India in this fight. Thank you for being with us on this debate, all of you. Gentlemen, ladies, ahead now we're going to show you reports, ground reports that are going to be shown at 10 p.m. where we are going to tell you what's happening in each and every corner of India. How India is fighting COVID is what we're going to come back with and show you those reports.